Back before Google, LinkedIn, and cell phones, I stumbled on recruiting. I always knew I wanted to create a recruiting firm that created an incredible candidate and client experience while allowing me, as well as my team, an opportunity to live an abundant life on our own terms, to have the freedom to work where, when, and how we want, and to be rewarded financially for a job well done. It has been a long, sometimes messy marathon, but wow, have I learned a lot about recruiting, branding, sales, scaling, leadership, overcoming challenges, and most importantly, overcoming myself. I absolutely love our industry, and this podcast is for you, my fellow recruiters ready to learn, grow, and push yourself to your next level. Let's do this together. We are talking about all things recruiting. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another edition of All Things Recruiting. As always, I am so happy that you are here. I've gotten some great messages on LinkedIn from people that have been listening and said that they got some real value from some of the episodes. So I so appreciate that. I love when I hear that. And if you ever have any suggestions or feedback or anything, please do reach out and let me know, because when I'm doing these episodes, I want to make sure that I am really providing a lot of value and something that you can walk away with and know, okay, I am changing the way that I'm either working on my business, if you are a solo recruiter or you own your own small boutique firm, or I'm walking away and I'm learning something that I can apply in my business if I'm working for someone else or another recruiting firm at the moment, but maybe you have aspirations to break out on your own. So I try to split the content so that I am providing good tidbits of information for people either that are solo recruiters or have started their own small business, because that is a lot of what is happening right now in the market. I've seen it probably the last 2 or 3 years, and that's really why I started this podcast, because I'm so passionate. I'm passionate really about two things when it comes to business. One is recruiting. As most of you know, I started a long time ago and just immediately loved it. And I also am super passionate about business and helping other recruiters do what I did so many years ago. So today we are going to talk about something that I think is super important for anyone, whether, as we just talked about, you are working in a business for someone else, or if you are working in a business for yourself. And that is, there are 6 numbers that I feel are really critical for you to know. Now, when you first start out in recruiting, you may have been trained on this, and it's probably, some of it will probably be very familiar to you. But the question is, are you doing it? Are you tracking these numbers? Or have you heard the information before, but maybe you either don't have time to do it, forgot how to calculate some of the numbers, don't feel it's really important anymore, or you just, kind of forgot and aren't doing it. So if that's the case, I'm going to remind you and give you some reasons why it's so important first before we get into the calculations and the numbers. I always start with why, because if you're like me, and I'm going to use kind of a gym scenario again, I always want to know why. Like, why is this so important? If I know the reason behind it, I am more likely to do it and keep doing it. So for example, water. I know, and most of us know, it's really important to drink water. But when I was at the gym several years back and I was competing still, and I asked my trainer, what is it about water that is going to do so much and is supposed to transform, your body when you're bodybuilding? And so the answer that she gave me was so, it hit home for me. And I'm like, okay, I get it. I totally get this, and this is why I'm going to do it. And it was much easier to get a gallon of water in every single day. And I have a water bottle actually right here on my desk that's full, and I know I need to start drinking my water. So with these numbers, I think it's important for you to understand why they are important. And so two things come to mind for me before we start getting, in detail about the numbers. One, numbers do not lie. So there are times when we do things and work out of emotion. We know we're supposed to, call clients. We know we're supposed to call candidates. We're supposed to make matches, right? That's what we do. But the numbers don't lie. So I think that, what's most important is if you use it as a compass to say, here is where I am currently at as far as my production, as far as, some of the other things that we're going to cover here in a second, as far as my take home money, here is where I'm at. Am I happy with this? And if I am happy with this, what did I do to get here? Because I want to replicate it. Or if you're not happy with where you are, like most of us in recruiting, we are high performers, we're drivers, we want to, accomplish something bigger each year. So if you're not happy with where you're at right now, it's like, okay, well, what are the numbers that did get you here? And how do you need to manipulate those numbers to get to where you really want to go in 2025? The other thing, just to play devil's advocate just a little bit, is that it is human nature to find external excuses for why we are not reaching our goals. So if we are struggling with, let's say, business development, and we feel like we've done some work and nothing's working, and we come home and we're like, gosh, it's the market. This market is horrible. I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe I'm in the wrong niche. Maybe I lost my touch. Maybe people don't use recruiters anymore. This NPC thing, that's dumb. That doesn't work. We can really start to get in this negative spin on everything instead of looking at, okay, what is it that I've done? So if you feel like you're stuck or stagnant or not reaching your goals, it is, time right now as we're talking together, or I'm talking and you're listening, to really identify, like, is it you? Is it me? Instead of pointing fingers out, let's point our finger back to us and go, okay, what do we need to do? What have we been doing? Is it that it's not working, or is it that we haven't been working the way that we should? So looking at your numbers, if you have, kept track, it's really easy to go, okay, well, here's why I am only getting 3 sendouts when I need to be getting 5 to hit my goal. So we'll talk more in just a second about that. But ultimately, we want to make money. We love what we do. We want to continue impacting people, helping our clients and our candidates, but we want money. And that is completely 100% okay. And we should want to make as much money as possible doing the thing that we love. So I know, and I'm going to talk just for myself, but it's not the money. It's not about the money. It's about what the money will bring me. So for me, when my kids were small, it was, I want to provide for my kids. I want to, have experiences with them and my significant other. I want flexibility. I want security. If something out of the ordinary comes up where I need to have a large amount of money to provide for my kids, I want to be able to say, you know what, luckily I have it. And there was a circumstance that came up a few years ago. I'm not going to get into the details, but a circumstance came up with one of my kids, and it was one of those moments where it was a very large sum of money that we needed to come up with. And luckily, I turned to Michael, my fiance, and I said, thank God that I have this money, that I have this, safety net, because, I don't even know what we would have done if we didn't have it. So that to me is huge. I want enough security, and I am not a huge risk taker. I'm not adverse to risk, but I like calculated risk. So my security net, I want it to be large, like just in case anything comes up where I need it, I want to know that it's there. And I want peace. I want peace of mind. I want peace that if there is a bad month, a bad quarter, a bad year, like last year for a lot of us was not a great year, I want to be able to say, you know what, that's okay. I've got the safety net for my company, for my business, for me personally, or at least I have enough of a safety net to make shifts in my business. And I want that. I want that peace. And I also want to feel accomplishment. I want to feel like I did something that I set my mind to. So, number one, think about, what does money mean to you? Why are you waking up every day doing this job, aside from, the impact that we make on our candidates and our clients, our peers, us personally? But what is it that money is going to provide you? And what do you want to change with that? Because we have, first quarter is almost gone. So we've got 3 quarters of, time to really shift things and really come out ahead for 2025. So here are the numbers that I think are super important. And for me, growing my business over the past 26 years, almost 27, these numbers I use and I know them like the back of my hand. So number one, obviously if you're driving and can't write this down, maybe save this, listen to it now, and then come back later and do these calculations. But if you are sitting somewhere where you can do it on your phone or, grab a piece of paper, here's 6 numbers I think you should pay attention to. So number one, this is kind of a no-brainer, but what is your production goal? How much money at the end of this year do you want to bill out? So for example, some of you might say, gosh, if I could hit that 6-figure mark of 100,000, that's going to be great, of production. We're not talking about take home, but just production. Some of you might want 200,000. Some of you might want 500, or you might want 1 million or more. So whatever that number is, write that number down. And then we're going to back out how many placements you need to make to hit that number for the year. So for example, if you want to bring home 500,000 in production, you're going to divide that, and let's say you're going to have to know your average fee. So I'm using, just as an example, $20,000 because it's easy to calculate, and roughly I think a lot of you might be in that range for 20,000. If you make, let's say, $100,000 salary placement and your fee happens to be 20%, then that's going to be where you're at 20,000 average fee. If you have both sides, if you're the account manager and if you're the recruiter. So if you're running a full desk. So for example, let's say your goal is 500,000 and your average fee is 20,000. That you're going to divide those two numbers, and it's 25 placements for the year, and you will be at 500K. So if you just think about that for a second, that's only a little over 2 placements every single month, and you'll be at 500,000, $500,000 in production. Totally doable. So that's the first number. Definitely know your number. So if you are, like I said, if you're doing, if you're the account manager and the recruiter, that's your number, 25 placements a year. If you are just the recruiter or just the account manager and you're splitting that production with someone else, you're going to double it. So then it would be, 50 placements working with someone else. So that would be like a placement a week. Some type of placement is going to happen every single week and you'll hit 500K. The next number are sendouts. So a lot of us in the recruiting industry will call an interview that we have with a client, like we're sending our candidate out to a client, we call that a sendout. So typical numbers, and these numbers will vary depending on your industry, your, how, I would say, I don't want to say how good of a recruiter you are, but your ratio. So for example, The average has been in past years about 1 in 5 sendouts is kind of an average number. So if you were to send 5 candidates out, usually you'll have 1 placement at least. Now, these numbers, again, can be skewed, especially like, for example, last year where it was a tougher year, it might be 1 in 8. But it is important for you to go back and look through, like, how many placements did you have last year and how many people did you send out to a client? And if you divide those two numbers, if you divide how many sendouts you had into the placements that you actually made, you'll get your send out ratio. And then you can look at it and you'll know, okay, it took me like 4 sendouts or 5 sendouts, but it is important to know that number. And if you don't know it, you can just say 1 in 5. So for our example of 500,000, if you have that ratio of 1 in 5 sendouts, then your number for the number of sendouts that you need is that 25 placements times 5, and that equals 125 sendouts per year. So if you send out 125 people and you're the account manager and you're also the recruiter, for a $20,000 fee, you are going to hit 500,000 in production, which roughly equates to a little bit more than 10 sendouts a month. So again, that's really doable, you guys. 10 sendouts a month could equate to $500,000 in billings. The next number are job orders. So again, it's really important for you to look at your ratios and say, all right, how many job orders did I have for the entire year last year and how many placements did I make? Those numbers will tell you it took me, for example, like 1 in 3 job orders to equal a placement. That's just about the average in our office. I know on the tech side, sometimes it can even be a little bit less. And again, it really depends on your market and your niche and if you have an exclusive or if you're contingent. So these numbers, please take with a grain of salt, but usually, 1 in 3. So if we have 3 job orders, we're usually filling 1 of them in a typical year. So if that's the case, then you would need 75 job orders for the year based on our example of 25 placements. And that would equate down to 6 job orders a month. And again, if you are the account manager and the recruiter, these numbers apply. If you're just doing half of the placement, then you would just double that. So I'm hoping that these numbers make sense to you. Let me know if you have questions. But so knowing your total production, just as a recap, the number of placements that you need to make, the number of sendouts, and the number of job orders. Those are like critical numbers that you need to know whether you have your own business and you're recruiting or if you're working for someone else. Those numbers are going to really be your compass. And then there's 2 other numbers that I think are really important. They're more if you are running your own small business, whether you're a solo recruiter or you have a couple people working for you. And that is, what is your hourly rate? How much money are you making per hour? And the reason why this is so important, it helps you delegate, and we'll go over how to find this number, but it helps you delegate and it also helps you give yourself a raise. Because if you're working for yourself, you are the only one that is going to give yourself a raise, and you deserve it. So what you do to get to that is, again, you're going to do 2 things. I think it's important to know what your hourly rate has been. So look at your production from last year. Let's say it was 200,000. What you'll do is you'll just divide 200,000 and you'll divide it by the number of hours in a year. So if you're working 40 hours a week, for example, it's 2,080. So you would take 200,000 divided by the number of hours in a year, which is 2080, And that's going to give you your hourly rate of $96.15. So if that is your production, you're making $96.15 an hour. If you want to work less hours, if you're working for yourself, then what you would do is say, you know what, I want to work harder, not work harder, I want to not work harder, I want to work smarter, and I want to work 30 hours a week. Then you would take that 2080 number and you would condense it down into 30 hours rather than the 40-hour work week, and divide that by 200,000. So if your goal, for example, is to make the same amount of money that you have been making, but make it in less time, you can play with those numbers and know, okay, I need to be making this amount per hour if I'm only working 30 hours a week. If I'm working 40 hours a week, it's going to be that 96.15 that I just mentioned. Now, some of you, once you know exactly how much you have been making and you want to make more, which is human nature, if we're doing the same thing and we're taking up the same amount of time, why don't we double that? Why don't we at least, have that goal to make more? So for example, if your goal is 500,000 and you're working a 40-hour work week, your hourly rate is $240. That's pretty cool. And if you are, your goal is to make $1 million, it's $480.77 an hour, which equates to $19,230 a week, roughly one placement. One placement at the calculations that we used before, $20,000 placement. If you have one of those a week, you are on track to be at $480 an hour, which is pretty cool, and bringing in $1 million of production. So that's my goal. I don't know about you, but I want to be working at that. And once you have your hourly rate, then what it really sets you up to do is look at it and go, okay, what activities am I doing in my day that are not worth $480.77 an hour? And this can be, I know I've mentioned this before, it can be something as easy as going to the grocery store. Is going to the grocery store worth $480 to you? Or can you delegate that task to Instacart and pay $15, $20 max, including tip, to have someone else go to the store for you, so that you can be either on a call or spending time with your loved ones and pay that $20. That's totally worth it to me. In fact, I did that this morning. I woke up and Michael and we wanted to go out for a walk, and I needed something, just a couple things from the store. And I'm like, you know what? While we were walking, I was like, I'm going to get on Instacart real quick and just order my eggs and my Greek yogurt. And I just ordered a few things. And by the time we got back from our walk, we walk about 45 minutes, Instacart was here. And I'm like, this is so cool, because it would have taken me probably longer, because I would have gotten in the store and I would have started shopping, and I would have come out with, a whole cart full of things that I don't even need. So by having someone else go there, I saved that hour. That was totally worth it for me. And then I got to spend time with Michael and still get to do all of my work and get all of my, production hours in. So $480, that could be for something like putting notes in the computer. Instead of doing that, is there a technology that you can do to replace that? For example, I recently got Metaview, and instead of me taking notes manually, which I love to do, and I still do when I'm talking to clients, Metaview does it. It's totally, AI note taking, and I can review it against my notes to make sure that, it didn't miss anything. And boom, I just saved 20 minutes at least. So once you have your hourly rate, then you can really look at and say, is this activity that I'm doing worth my hourly rate? So if your goal is $1 million, your hourly rate is $480.77 an hour, you can look at that and go, is this task For example, and I'm using something like maybe in your personal life, even going grocery shopping. Is going grocery shopping worth $480.77 if I have to run to the store during the day to grab something I forgot? And that was the case even this morning. So Michael and I, we woke up, we usually like to walk in the morning, and I remembered I needed a couple things from the store. So as we started our walk, I went on Instacart and I was like, all right, I'm going to get my couple items. And by the time we finished our walk, Instacart was here. And I'm like, wow, I just saved, almost an hour of my time. And it probably would have been more because I would have bought things I didn't even need and put it in my cart. And so instead of doing that, I was able to spend good quality time with Michael and get back to work and, put in my work and time that I need to for my business rather than going later in the day and taking an hour off and wasting $480. So whether it's something in your personal life or on your business, look at it. For example, maybe a technology can help you replace the time that it would have taken you to create notes. Or you could get a VA that can input notes into your database where it would take you, a half hour of your time after a client intake call. So for example, I started using Metaview a couple weeks ago. And even though I'm old school and I like writing my notes down, that every time I have a client intake call and get a new job order, it saves me at least a half an hour of time. So, 480 divided by 2, that is how much time it literally takes me to put in a new client intake into our database. So instead of doing that, I'm able to replace that time with MetaView, which is like, I don't know, it's a free trial. I think I'm still in the free trial. So it's free. Or if you have a VA, for probably $20, you can have someone else do that. So wherever you're at, if your goal's not a million, maybe it's 200K. That's still $96 an hour. So really look at that, pay attention to it. And if it's not worth your time, have someone else do it or don't do it at all, or have technology replace it for you. So the last thing I wanted to talk about is just knowing your break-even point. And this is really a good number for those of you that have your own small business. I always really tell people, as you're growing and as you're just starting out, really look at your expenses and try to be as lean as possible. But that being the case, if you do own your own business, what you want to do is really know, okay, what are my gross billings, but what are my costs every single month? And I would suggest doing this at least quarterly because things can sometimes change, or we end up putting just very inexpensive things into our expenses. It might be $20 here. It could be a membership, for something that's $50. And all of a sudden you start adding those up and you're like, wow, that's, $500 or $1,000 extra dollars per month that I'm spending. Is it really necessary? So knowing your break even, the way that you do that is just take your total billings, what you're billing out, and subtract out. You can do it yearly. I like to do it monthly. So I always say, like, what's my break even per month? And that is take all of your monthly expenses. So for example, some monthly expenses could be LinkedIn Recruiter. It could be any tools that you're using. It could be your car if you're using it to drive to meet clients. And you'd want to talk to your accountant, to see what's a write-off. Any meals, entertainment. Again, those are expenses and that will detract from what your actual take home is. So you want to really pay attention to that. You also, for those of you that own your own small business, insurance. So usually general liability, professional liability, your cell phone. There's so many expenses that you have to look at when you're trying to find out what your break-even point is. So you really want to look at that and know, okay, let's say, for example, my expenses are, I'm just throwing out a number, $3,000. And my monthly billings are 15,000. Well, really what you want to do then is know it's not 15,000, but your take home is actually 12. So always keeping those numbers in line and knowing what is my break-even point? Like how much money do I have to make per month just to be at zero? Because that way you can forecast, you can budget, and you don't get surprised. That's the least thing. That's the thing that you do not want to do in business. You don't want to be surprised. You want to really have some forethought and know and budget and know what's coming ahead, or at least as much as possible. So just to recap, the 6 things are knowing your production goal, your placements, your sendouts, your job orders, what your hourly rate is, and then what your break-even point is for your business. So I hope this helps. I would love to connect. One of the things that I'm doing this month is I'm doing a contest. And if you reach out to me on Instagram next Wednesday, which is actually the Wednesday that this is going live, which I'm going to tell you the date right now. I'm recording on Thursday. So it's going to go live on March 26th. So on March 26th, connect with me on Instagram, and I'll put my handle in the show notes. Connect with me, and then in the comments on the post for this day, 326, put in the word money. And I'm going to have a contest and pick one of you guys, and it's going to be a 45-minute free spot coaching call with me, and we can go over anything in your business that you want to go over. You can ask me any questions, anything that I can do to help you. 40 minutes is whatever that $480.77 divided by 40 minutes. I'm gonna figure this out. How much is this? 480.77 divided by 40 minutes. Gosh, I don't even know. My calculation's off. I'll let you know. I'm going to put that in the show notes too. But anyways, it's definitely something I am here to help. And we'll do a 45-minute call. Connect with me on Instagram on the 26th of March and comment money, and we'll get together and talk more. But I hope this was helpful. And until next time, make it a great week, and I will see you next week. Bye. Thanks for joining me today. I would love to hear what resonated with you or suggestions for a future show. Connect with me on LinkedIn and be sure to sign up for our monthly newsletter. All the links are in the show notes. And if you or someone you know is an amazing recruiter and is looking to join my brokerage recruiting model for more time, freedom, and money, let's chat.